Hi there, I thought I'd share a short video reflection on the scripture readings that have been suggested for churches to look at this Sunday, which is the 29th of October. And the scripture readings that have been suggested for this Sunday are from 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 1 to 8, and from Matthew's Gospel chapter 22, verse 34 to 46. So feel free to pause the video and have a read of those and then start the video again. So we've been starting to hear from Paul's first letter to the church in Thessalonica in Greece. And it seems like this is the earliest letter that we have from Paul. It seems like it's actually the oldest written piece of Christian scripture. And in this letter, Paul, along with his companions, Silas and Timothy, are writing to the people who they had met in this city when they were traveling and who had heard the good news of Christ and chosen to stop worshipping the many gods of the city and to become followers of Christ. And when these people write to the Thessalonian Christians, they're reminiscing about the manner in which they came to them with the good news. They say they didn't come using power to share the good news. They didn't come with authority given to them by the rulers of the city, saying that they had a right to practice their faith and to share their message. They didn't share the good news through trickery by setting up a situation where they offer them something and say they can only have it if they listen to an evangelistic presentation, as churches have sometimes done. And they say that they didn't share the good news so that they could benefit, so that they could make money through this new religion, or so that they could gain favors or influence. There's been a history of that in the church as well, which I'm sure you would have heard about. Rather, when these Jewish Christian men remember coming to the people who became the Thessalonian church, they describe themselves as servants caring for children. And they compare themselves to mothers caring for their babies. They say that they came to Thessalonica bringing the good news, and they were gentle among the people of that city. Some of the oldest copies of this letter, there's only a few of them, actually say that they came as infants. So it might be that that is what was originally written, and that most of the copies that we have got this edit where it's saying that they came as gentle, when they're actually saying they came as infants, they came as babies. Later on, that would make sense, because later on, just after this, they talk about themselves as orphans. So it makes it sound like maybe what they mean is that the people of Thessalonica who accepted them were the mothers and the nurses caring for Paul and Timothy and Silas after the rough treatment that they had received in the last city that they visited. In any case, whichever version of the letter we use, they're not wanting to just spread a religion. They dearly care for the new Christians in Thessalonica. I wonder, is this how we think about mission? Do we go out vulnerably and look for people who welcome us and show us love? In the gospel reading for today, Jesus is talking about love. And we again, like last week, have Jewish leaders coming to ask Jesus questions and trying to trap him, trying to get him to say the wrong thing. And when we hear this story, we've got to remember that Jesus is also a Jewish religious leader. These Jewish leaders from the Pharisee movement are talking to Jesus because Jesus is also a Jewish leader, and his followers at this stage are a rival Jewish movement. So they talk together a lot throughout the Gospels because they actually have a lot in common. They're both concerned with how ordinary people should follow the Torah, the books of the law, in the present situation, in everyday things like agriculture and food and table fellowship. And they're both pretty critical of the temple and the priesthood. I think they have more in common with each other than they do with the other movements within Judaism at that time. And that's why their conflict is so intense. It's like a rivalry between different socialist groups who almost agree but can't stand each other. At this stage, Jesus has really been provoking conflict. He's led a march into the city, making people wonder if this is God's Messiah who will liberate them from foreign control and give their homeland back to them. He's shut down the temple, criticized the temple system, and everyone would have remembered that a previous rebellion against colonial rulers has started in this temple. So the Pharisees and the Herodians, the Jewish leaders who support the Roman rulers, they've just been asking him about whether people should pay tax, trying to get him to say whether he's trying to undermine the emperor, basically. And instead he's avoided that trap by saying, give back all the emperor's coins. They bear the image of the emperor. The emperor claims to be God, so they are idols. Give back the coins. And he doesn't have any of these idolatrous coins himself. He needs one of them to actually show him whose image is on it. He says, give your money to Caesar and give yourself to God because you bear the image of God. That's what's been happening up until this point. But now they're asking him which command in the Torah, which command in the books of Moses is most important. He answers that by quoting the book of Deuteronomy, which is remembered as Moses' last speech to the ancient people of Israel, as they were about to go into the Promised Land, somewhere that Moses would never go himself. And the speech goes into a lot of details about how they should live in the land. But early on in the speech, he says something that is said again and again in Judaism at the beginning and end of each day, and in the synagogues as well. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. They can't argue with that. But he goes on and adds another favourite, which sums up his ministry, I think. And I think it shows us how we love God. He says, the second command is this from the book of Leviticus. You shall love your neighbour as yourself. By treating the people around us with love, we're also showing our love for God. Because each person around us bears the image of God. We cannot claim that we love God if we're mistreating or neglecting the people around us who bear God's image. We can't claim to love God and harm God's creatures. We can't say that we love God and harm others who God also loves, even if they're our enemies. If they're our enemies, we've got to try and work out how we can engage in the conflict we have with them, but not mistreat the people that we're struggling with. Jesus says that these two simple commands are the basic gist of the whole Torah and the prophets as well. All the things that are said in these books are trying to get us to treat God with love and to treat the others around us with love. And if we're finding it difficult, if we're finding it overwhelming thinking about all the things that are said in the scripture and all the things that have been said by people of faith since, we can just focus on loving God and loving the others around us. And that will help us work out how we can live a faithful life in this time and place.